Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about what I wish I knew before I started creating content for clients. The overview, the intro, the mistake I made early, what actually works, the honest picture, and it's your favorite, the action plan. So, in hindsight, the dots connect. In the moment, you're just stumbling forward, hoping something sticks. If I could go back and sit with the version of myself that was just starting to build a content for clients' business, I would save the person a lot of pain. Not the dramatic pain, the slow, expensive kind, the kind that comes from making the same avoidable mistakes over and over because nobody told you what to expect on the other side of turning your creative skills into a client-facing business. There are things I believe going in that turned out to be completely wrong. Assumptions about clients, about pricing, about the work would feel like, about what would actually grow the business versus what would keep it busy. I learned all of them the expensive way, through loss of clients, underpriced projects, misaligned expectations, and months of effort pointing in the directions that went nowhere. Today, I'm giving you all of it. Not the polished version, the real version. The things I wish someone had handed me before I even started. So you can move faster, make fewer mistakes, and build something that actually works from the beginning. I'm Danny. I run Drvizuals, and I help photographers, filmmakers, brand owners build content systems that get them clients. This video is the one I would have needed most before I built mine. So, let's get right into it. The mistake I made early. A smart person learns from their mistakes. A wise person learns from the mistakes of others. Mistake number one. I thought better work would automatically mean more clients, and that's not the case. This was my first and most expensive assumption. I believed that if I just kept getting better, technically, creativity, visually, the clients would follow naturally. The work would speak for itself. It doesn't. Work quality is the entry point. It's the thing that keeps a client once they've hired you. But it's not what gets them to hire you in the first place. What gets them to hire you is positioning, visibility, a clear signal that you understand their specific problem and have solved it before. None of those things come from getting better at your craft. They come from getting better at communicating the value of your craft to a specific person who actually needs it. I spent the first year at Drvizuals investing almost entirely in the work and almost nothing in the communication of the actual work. My portfolio got stronger, my client list barely moved. The lesson cost me a full year. Mistake number two. I underpriced because I was afraid, not because it made sense. When I set my first prices, I told myself I was being strategic, competitive rates, building a client base, getting testimonials, creating a foundation before I raised my prices. That was the story I was telling myself. The truth was simpler and harder to admit. I was afraid nobody would say yes at a higher number. I was afraid of the conversation. I was afraid that my work wasn't worth what I actually knew it was worth, and I priced it accordingly to the fear, not the actual value. Here's what underpricing actually produces that nobody tells you. It attracts the wrong clients. The clients who hire based on price are almost always the clients who manage you most tightly, respect the process least, and ask for the most revisions. The clients who hire based on value because they believe in what you do and trust your judgment are almost never the cheapest option in the room. Low prices don't build a client base. They build a client base of people who would never pay you real rates anyway. And then you have to start over when you finally raise them. Price from value, not from fear. Even before it feels justified, especially before it feels justified. Mistake number three. I thought content was marketing. It's actually sales. I used to think of content I made for my own brand as marketing. Something that built awareness, something that got my name out there, a long-term play that might eventually produce leads. That framing kept me making content that was too broad, too unfocused, and too much about me and not enough about the specific person I was trying to reach. When I started treating content as sales, as a pre-sale tool that specifically addresses the doubts, fears, and questions of my ideal client before they ever reached out, everything changed for me. Marketing says, here I am, here's what I do. Sales says, here's your problem, here's exactly how I solve it, here's what it looks like when I do. The shift from marketing content to sales content is the biggest lever I've seen move a creative brand owner lead quality in the shortest time. Not more content, better pointed content. Mistake number 4. I underestimated the emotional labor. Nobody told me how much of a client work is emotional labor. Not the creative labor, not the technical labor, the emotional work, managing expectations, reading the energy in the room, directing someone who's never been photographed or filmed before and is terrified, handling the revisions that feels personal when it isn't, staying regulated when a client is actually anxious. I thought I was selling photographs and videos. I was actually selling an experience, and the quality of that experience depended almost entirely on my ability to manage emotional dimensions of the work. The creatives who get referrals are not always the most technically gifted. They're the ones who make clients feel safe, seen, and confident, and they're in good hands. That's an emotional skill, and it's learnable, but only if you know it's part of the job. Mistake number 5. I took every client who said yes. Early on, every yes felt like success. Someone wanted to hire me, someone saw the value, someone was willing to pay. So I said yes to all of them. The client whose vision was misaligned with my work, the client who haggled the rate down to a number that made the project unaffordable, the client who gave me a bad feeling in the discovery call that I talked myself out of. Every wrong fit client costs more than they pay. They cost the time you could have spent on the right client. They cost the energy you spend managing the misalignments. They cost the creative satisfaction of doing work you're actually proud of. And they produce a result that doesn't represent your best, which means it doesn't attract the next right client either. The ability to say no to wrong fit clients is not a luxury for when you have enough clients. It is the mechanism that produces enough right fit clients. Because the wrong fit, yes, blocked the space the right fit clients would have filled. What actually works? Success is not the result of spontaneous combustion. You must set yourself on fire. What I would do differently from day one. Here's how I would build Drvizuals or any business if I was starting today with everything I know. I would start with one client type, not photographers, not filmmakers, and brand owners and entrepreneurs, just one. The most specific person I could describe whose problem I understand most deeply and whose success would make the best case study for the next client. Specificity is not limiting, it's amplifying. The more specific your client description, the more powerful your content speaks to them. The faster they self-select and the shorter the path from content to call. Then I would build one offer, not a menu, one clearly packaged, clearly priced, clearly outcome-focused offer so that the client only decision is yes or no, not which option, not how to customize, not what included in which tier, yes or no. Then I would make content that is entirely about the problem of that one client type. Not about my process, not about my gear, about their work, their struggles, their questions, their fears, content that makes them feel understood before they've ever spoken to me. And then I would show up consistently, not perfectly, but consistently. 3 times a week, every week, without negotiating with myself about whether I feel it or not. One client type, one offer, one content about the world, Consistent presence, that's the whole system. I didn't need any of the complexity I added in 1 year. I needed that simplicity held consistently. The thing nobody talks to you about client work. Beyond the mistakes, there are things about client work that I genuinely didn't know I couldn't have guessed. Things that would have helped me prepare. The first call is the most important piece of content you will ever create for that client. Not the deliverables, the call. How you listen, how you ask questions, how you make them feel heard and understood in the first conversation. That determines whether they refer you, whether they come back, and whether they trust your creative judgment on the actual project. Most creative brand owners treat the discovery call as a formality before the real work. The clients who love working with you treat it as the thing that made them feel safe enough to trust you with the real work. The second thing nobody tells you, your best clients will often come from your least glamorous projects. The small business owner who could only afford your basic package 3 years ago, who you treated with the same care as your highest paying clients. They're now running a much bigger business and they came back to you first. Every client is a future referral. Remember that. Every interaction is a future testimonial. There are no unimportant clients. The third thing is feedback is not personal until you make it personal. The revision request that stings, the comment on the edit that feels like criticism of your eye, the client who loved the shoot but wants the post-production to look different. These things feel personal because your work comes from somewhere personal, but the client is not commenting on you. They're communicating their vision, which is what you're being paid to do. The creative who receives feedback cleanly, without ego, without defensiveness, without needing to define the original, is the creative who gets called back every time, every single time. What I know now that I didn't know then. The most important thing I know now that I didn't know when I started is the business is not about the content. The content is about the business. That sounds obvious. It wasn't. For a long time, I was building a body of work and hoping the business would come. I had it backwards. The business, the clear offer, the specific client, the consistent positioning, that comes first. The content is the thing that makes the business visible to the right people. When you build in that order, business clarity first, content second, every piece of content has a job. It's not an expression, it's a direction. It moves a specific person from an unaware to interest to ready to reach out. And when the content has a job, it produces results. Not someday, not after you've been consistent for a year. Within weeks of getting positioning right, the content starts pulling the right people towards you. That's the system. That's what I wish someone had showed me before I started. Not the tactics, the order. The sequence that makes the tactics work. The honest picture. The truth is rarely pure and never simple. What nobody told me about the emotional side. I want to end this with something that isn't strategy, because the strategy matters, but so does this. Building the content for clients' business as a creative is one of the lonelier things you can do. Not because there's no community, but because the internal experience of it, the doubts, the slow months, the moments where you wonder if any of this is working, the gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be by now, the internal experiences is yours alone. Nobody sees it, most people don't understand it, and the people closest to you who love you often can't give you the specific kind of understanding that only comes from someone who's done the same thing. I wish someone had told me that the doubt is not a sign that you're doing it wrong. It's a sign that you care enough for the stakes to feel real. The people who doubt are the people who don't care deeply about the outcome. Doubt is the tax you pay for ambition. I also wish someone had told me that the slow periods are not failure. They're the phases where the foundation is being built underground, where the work you're doing is creating a root system that isn't visible yet, but will hold everything that comes after. The tree doesn't grow during winter, but winter is when the roots go its deepest. Stay in it, do the work, build a system, point the content at the right person. Show up when it feels pointless because the point reveals itself, not the people who gave up before it arrived, but the ones who were still showing up when it did. Your action plan. 5 things to do this week based on everything we just covered. These are the things I would have done in a month if I had known then what I know now. Write your one client description, not a demographic, a person. Describe them in one paragraph. What they do, what the problem they have, what they've already tried, what they're afraid of, what they actually want. Be specific that you could recognize the person in a DM within the first 2 sentences. Audit your current pricing against your real value. Write down what you're currently charging, then write down what an hour of your client time is worth if your work performs the way it's supposed to. Write down what your work produces for them in leads, trust sales, or positioning. Is what you charge in a proportion to what you produce. If the answer makes you feel uncomfortable, that discomfort is the gap between your fear-based pricing and your real value-based pricing. Identify one package and raise the price this week. Not next month, this week. Rewrite your last 3 pieces of content as sales content. Identify the wrong fit clients or a project type that you will stop saying yes to, somebody that doesn't align with your beliefs or morals, your projects, your future self. Map the sequence: business first, content second. So understand your client type, what's your offer, the main problem you're offering, and what the content addresses that problem directly. And then come up with the actual content. Everything I know about building a content for clients' business that actually works is in those 5 actions. They're not glamorous, they're not complicated, they're just things I wish I had done first instead of last. Do them this week. Come back and tell me what shifted. The offer. If you want to build the content for client system the right way from the start, or rebuild it for your further along or something isn't working, that's exactly what I do at Drvizuals. We build the clarity, the offer, and the content system together. You don't have to learn it the expensive way as I did. So there is a strategy called link down below. Click it. It's about 30 minutes. We'll go everything about your business and understand where you are and where you want to be. Subscribe if this saved you from at least one mistake I made. Share it with a friend or a creative who's just starting out or could use the honest version instead of the highlighted reel. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.